They provoked humanity, we eradicated them completely. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. They provoked humanity, we eradicated them completely. It all started with a simple mistake, a small act of arrogance that cost an entire species their existence. The aliens, powerful and feared across the galaxy, never expected humanity to retaliate, let alone destroy them completely. But that's exactly what happened. Jason Wood, a seasoned soldier, had no idea that this moment would define the fate of his people. It was supposed to be just another skirmish, another battle in the endless war for survival. Little did he know, his actions would soon ignite a chain of events that would lead to humanity's rise and the fall of a mighty alien empire. Back in his hometown, Jason was just another face in the crowd. A soldier, yes, but also a son, a brother, and a friend. He lived an ordinary life, always prepared for the worst, but never expecting it to come for him personally. The day the aliens arrived was like any other, until the sky turned black with their ships. They called themselves the Zorath, and their empire stretched across the stars. But when they landed on Earth, they made one fatal mistake, they underestimated humanity. The Zorath believed their technology, their sheer power, would crush any resistance. They invaded, took what they wanted, and declared humanity nothing more than an inconvenience. That was their first mistake. Their second mistake came when they crossed Jason's path. Jason was on a routine mission when the Zorath attacked a civilian colony. He was just supposed to be providing support, nothing more. But when he saw the alien ships descending upon the innocent people below, something inside him snapped. Without hesitation, he rushed into the fray. Armed with nothing but his standard-issue rifle and the strength of his convictions, Jason fought like a man possessed. He wasn't a hero, just a soldier doing his job. But in that moment, he became something more. As he gunned down the enemy, saving families and securing civilians, Jason realized that humanity's survival depended on the strength of each individual. His bravery sparked something across the globe. People saw what one person could do when pushed to the edge. They fought back, united as never before. But this was just the beginning of the war. As Jason rejoined his team after the battle, little did he know that the true test was yet to come. The Zorath retaliated with a fury the world had never seen before. They unleashed their most terrifying weapon, a biological plague designed to decimate human populations. The first few months were hell. Entire cities fell silent, their streets emptied by death. But humanity did not break. It never does. Jason, along with a ragtag group of survivors, fought tooth and nail to find a cure. Their journey took them deep into enemy territory, where they uncovered the true nature of the Zorath's plans, an invasion meant to wipe out all of humanity, to claim Earth as their own. They never thought humanity could fight back. They thought wrong. The battle to save Earth wasn't just about survival, it was about proving that humanity, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, could rise up and fight back against any threat. And Jason would be the one to lead that charge. Jason Wood knew this was just the beginning. The world had already begun to feel the full weight of the alien threat, but the true extent of what humanity was up against hadn't fully sunk in yet. The Zorath were unlike anything the Earth had ever seen, highly intelligent, ruthless, and technologically advanced beyond imagination. But Jason was determined to change that. Despite the chaos and destruction caused by their initial attack, he still believed in humanity's strength. He knew that they weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting to protect everything they had built. This fight was no longer about defense. It was about reclaiming Earth. It was about showing the universe that humanity would not bow down, no matter the odds. As Jason looked out over the city from the rooftop of their makeshift headquarters, the gravity of the situation became clearer. The Zorath had only begun their assault. They hadn't yet used their most powerful weapons, and Jason feared it was only a matter of time before they did. A sudden crackling sound broke his thoughts. A communicator on his wrist lit up. "Commander Wood," the voice on the other end was urgent, "we have intel. The Zorath are planning a full-scale bombardment on the eastern seaboard. They plan to use their pulse cannons to wipe out our major cities." Jason's grip tightened on the railing. The Zorath were taking no chances. They were going to leave nothing but rubble. His mind raced with strategies and counterattacks, but deep down, he knew that there was no easy solution. This wasn't just a fight against their military. It was a fight for their very existence. "Get the team ready," Jason ordered, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "We leave in 30 minutes. The team was already gathered when Jason entered the command center. His eyes met theirs, every face was determined, but there was a certain heaviness in the air. The Zorath had made their move, and this was their response. There was no going back now. "All right, here's the plan," Jason began, his tone sharp. "We need to take out their pulse cannons before they launch another strike. We have one shot at this. If we fail, the East Coast is gone." The team nodded, the weight of the mission clear in their eyes. Jason knew they were all prepared to fight to the end, but a part of him couldn't shake the nagging feeling that they were fighting an enemy with no equal. The Zorath had technology that could destroy entire cities in seconds. No human weapon had that kind of power. But what humanity did have was something the Zorath couldn't understand: unity, determination, and heart. As they boarded the transport, Jason's thoughts drifted back to the time before all of this, back to the quiet days when he wasn't preparing for the end of the world. Back then, he was just another soldier, another face in the crowd. But now, he was leading humanity's fight for survival. The journey was long, and the risk was high, but he couldn't afford to think about the odds. He had to keep his focus. He had to stay strong for those counting on him. When the transport arrived at their destination, Jason felt a rush of adrenaline. The pulse cannon was in sight, massive and foreboding, surrounded by heavily fortified Zorath troops. "This is it," Jason muttered, his hand instinctively moving to his rifle. "On my mark." The team moved swiftly into position, each member ready for the fight of their lives. Jason's heart raced, but he kept his cool. There was no room for fear now. It was do or die. With a single word, they charged, and the battle erupted in a storm of gunfire and explosions. The Zorath fought back fiercely, but humanity's will to survive was stronger. Jason could feel the ground shake beneath him as he fired at the Zorath soldiers, each shot a step closer to victory. But even as they pushed forward, the pulse cannon loomed ahead, a reminder of the overwhelming power their enemies held. Just when they thought they had the upper hand, the ground trembled beneath them. The pulse cannon fired. A blinding flash of light erupted from the cannon's barrel, and for a moment, everything went silent. The shockwave sent Jason and his team flying backward, the force of the blast nearly knocking him unconscious. When he regained his senses, he saw the destruction before him. The eastern seaboard was still intact, but the Zorath's firepower had left deep scars across the land. Jason's team was battered but not broken. "We're not finished yet," Jason muttered, pulling himself to his feet. "We push forward, we take them down, and we end this." He stood tall, rallying his team, his voice resolute. The Zorath had made a grave mistake underestimating humanity. They had poked the bear, and now it was time for humanity to show them why they should never have provoked them. With unwavering determination, Jason and his team pressed on. The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. As Jason and his team continued their push against the Zorath, the true magnitude of the war began to unfold before their eyes. The aliens had underestimated humanity's resilience, but what they didn't know was that every loss, every sacrifice, only fueled the fire within the human spirit. The pulse cannon had caused devastation, but Jason knew that if they didn't act fast, it would be the beginning of the end for Earth. There was no time to waste. They had to move quickly, striking deep into the heart of the Zorath forces while they were still reeling from the initial assault. Jason glanced over his team, seeing the weariness on their faces, but he knew there was no room for hesitation. They had come too far to stop now. "Keep pushing forward," Jason said, his voice unwavering as he led the charge. "We don't retreat. Not today." The soldiers nodded, each one of them knowing the stakes were higher than ever. They had no choice but to press forward. As they advanced, Jason's thoughts raced. The Zorath had many powerful weapons, but the one thing they couldn't prepare for was humanity's sheer will to survive. Even with their advanced technology, the Zorath were learning the hard way that humanity wasn't a race to be conquered or wiped out. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with. The next wave of Zorath soldiers met them head-on, and Jason felt his heart pound as the battle intensified. His team, though battle-worn, moved with precision, clearing the way toward the Zorath command center. Jason led the charge, his rifle steady in his hands as he took down Zorath soldiers one by one, each shot landing with deadly accuracy. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins, the rush of combat taking over his every sense. This wasn't just a fight for survival, this was a fight for humanity's future, and Jason would be damned if he let it slip away. As they neared the command center, the air grew thick with tension. The final push was coming, and Jason knew they were going to need everything they had to succeed. They could hear the sounds of Zorath reinforcements moving into position, the faint hum of their energy weapons charging, ready to fire. Jason knew that they had to move fast. There was no time for second-guessing. "We hit them hard and fast," Jason barked to his team. "We're not giving them a chance to regroup." With that, they stormed the command center, weapons blazing, taking down guards and clearing obstacles with the efficiency that only a seasoned team could achieve. The Zorath commander, a towering figure clad in advanced armor, stood at the center of the room, eyes narrowed as he watched the humans storm in. "You think you can defeat us?" the commander sneered, his voice filled with disdain. "You're nothing but insects to us." Jason stepped forward, his gaze locked with the Zorath commanders. "We're more than you think," he said, his voice calm but filled with determination. "And we'll show you why." Without another word, the battle ensued. "Jason!" And the commander clashed in a brutal hand-to-hand combat, the sounds of their struggle echoing through the room. Jason's training and experience were put to the test as he fought against the Zorath's superior strength and speed. But Jason wasn't about to let that stop him. He fought with everything he had, every punch, every kick, driven by the survival of humanity. With a final, well-placed blow, Jason sent the Zorath commander crashing to the ground. The room fell silent as the human team stood victorious, but Jason knew it wasn't over yet. The Zorath Empire was vast, and this was just one battle in an ongoing war. Still, they had struck a decisive blow, one that would echo through the stars. As Jason and his team exited the command center, they could hear the distant sound of victory cheers from their fellow soldiers. The tide was turning. Humanity wasn't going down without a fight, and the Zorath were starting to realize that they had made a grave mistake. Jason looked at his team, a small but determined smile crossing his face. "This isn't over," he said, his voice filled with resolve. "We fight on, together, until they understand that humanity is not a race to be conquered. We are the ones who conquer." The battle for Earth was far from finished, but Jason and his team had shown the universe that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. As Jason and his team made their way through the wreckage of the Zorath command center, the harsh reality of their victory started to settle in. This wasn't just a battle won, it was a turning point in the war for humanity's survival, but Jason knew that the war was far from over. The Zorath were not a race to be easily defeated. They were ruthless, calculating, and they would come back stronger than before. As they gathered in the war room, Jason looked around at his team, seeing the exhaustion in their eyes. They had fought hard, but the cost of victory had taken its toll. Still, they had won a critical victory, and that was enough to keep their spirits high for now. "We've done it, but we're not done," Jason said, his voice steady as he addressed his team. "The Zorath will regroup, they will rebuild, and they will come after us with everything they've got. But we've proven that we can fight back. We've proven that humanity has what it takes to survive." His words were met with nods of agreement. The team knew what lay ahead. The Zorath would not forgive this defeat, but humanity's resolve was stronger than ever. The next few days were spent fortifying their position and preparing for the next wave of attacks. The Zorath had already begun their retaliation, but Jason's team was ready. They knew that they could not afford to wait any longer. "We need to go on the offensive," Jason told his team one morning, his eyes burning with determination. "We can't wait for them to strike again. We need to take the fight to them, hit them where it hurts." The team immediately sprang into action, each member knowing their role in the coming mission. Jason's plan was bold, risky, and it would require every ounce of their skill and courage. They would infiltrate a Zorath stronghold, cut off their supply lines, and disrupt their ability to wage war effectively. It was a mission that could change the tide of the war, but it was also a mission that could end their lives. As the team boarded their transport, Jason couldn't help but think of the stakes. This mission was their last chance to strike a decisive blow against the Zorath. If they failed, the enemy would only grow stronger. "We have one shot at this," Jason said to his team as the transport launched. "We hit hard, we hit fast, and we get out before they can retaliate. This is our moment. Let's make it count." The transport broke through the atmosphere, heading toward the Zorath stronghold. The air inside the ship was thick with tension as the team prepared for the mission ahead. Jason's thoughts were focused, his mind running through the plan over and over again. He couldn't afford to make a mistake. As they neared the target, the tension reached its peak. The Zorath stronghold loomed ahead, a fortress of steel and energy, but Jason knew that their advantage lay in their ability to move swiftly and strike without warning. "We're in position," one of his team members said over the comms. "Ready to deploy." "Let's go," Jason said, his voice firm. The team dropped from the transport, using their advanced gear to parachute silently into the heart of the stronghold. The mission was underway. They moved quickly, cutting through the outer defenses with precision. Jason led the charge, his rifle steady in his hands as they infiltrated deeper into the enemy base. Each step was calculated, each decision made with the utmost care. The Zorath soldiers were formidable, but they were not prepared for the speed and ferocity of the human team. The Zorath had always seen themselves as superior, but what they failed to understand was that humanity's greatest strength was their adaptability. As they reached the central command center, Jason felt a sense of urgency. They had to destroy the Zorath's ability to wage war, and they had to do it now. "We've got one shot at this," Jason said, his voice low and urgent. "We take out their power grid, and we take out their war machine." The team worked quickly, setting charges on the power grid and the supply lines. The explosions rocked the base, sending shockwaves through the walls. Jason's team moved with the precision of a well-oiled machine, planting explosives, taking out Zorath reinforcements, and securing the area. But as they completed the mission, the sound of Zorath reinforcements moving in quickly grew louder. They had done it, they had struck a crippling blow to the enemy, but now they had to make their escape. "We're out of time," Jason shouted as he gathered his team. "Move, now!" They fought their way to the extraction point, with Zorath forces hot on their tail. The battle was far from over, but Jason knew that their victory today was a pivotal moment. They had proven that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. As the extraction ship took off, Jason looked down at the smoldering Zorath stronghold below, a mixture of relief and determination in his chest. The war was far from over, but humanity had taken a major step toward victory. "This isn't just our fight," Jason muttered to himself, watching the Zorath base disappear beneath them. "It's for every man, woman, and child on Earth. And we're not going to stop until we've won." The war for Earth was far from finished, but today, humanity had taken a decisive step toward claiming victory. And Jason would be there every step of the way, leading the charge until the Zorath were nothing but a memory. As Jason and his team made their way back to the safety of their headquarters, the weight of their recent mission began to settle in. They had just crippled one of the Zorath's most important strongholds, but the fight was far from over. The Zorath, though reeling, were not a race that would easily be defeated. They would retaliate with everything they had. Jason knew this. He had seen the enemy's determination firsthand, and the scars of battle were proof of how close they were to extinction. But humanity, despite the odds, had shown resilience. The victories they had secured so far were not just a testament to their strength, but to their spirit. They were more than just survivors, they were fighters, and they would continue to fight for their planet, for their families, for each other. The briefing room was tense as the team gathered around Jason. Everyone was tired, but there was no time to rest. They had hit the Zorath hard, but Jason knew that the real battle was just beginning. "We've done well," Jason began, his voice steady, "but this war isn't won yet. The Zorath will come for us with everything they have. We need to be ready for what's coming next." His words hung in the air, a reminder of the harsh truth they all faced. The team nodded, each of them feeling the weight of the responsibility they carried. They had already lost so much, but they couldn't afford to lose more. "We hit them where it hurts," Jason continued, "but we need to do more. We need to take down their supply lines, destroy their command centers, and cripple their ability to fight back." Jason's plan was bold, dangerous, and risky, but it was the only option they had left. They couldn't just wait for the Zorath to regroup and launch another attack. They had to keep the pressure on, strike fast and hard before the enemy could adapt. The next few days were spent preparing for their next strike. They had learned valuable intel from their last mission, and now, armed with that knowledge, they would go even deeper into Zorath territory. Jason was in the middle of strategizing the next assault when a familiar face entered the room, Colonel Sarah Fields, a trusted ally and leader of a special operations team. She looked grim, her face marked by the toll of the war. "Commander Wood," she said, her voice low, "we have a new problem. A Zorath fleet has entered our sector. They're bringing reinforcements from the core worlds. If we don't act fast, we're looking at an invasion." Jason's mind raced as he processed the news. The Zorath were preparing for a full-scale assault. "How long do we have?" he asked, his voice firm, his mind already working through the possible outcomes. "Maybe 3 days," she replied, "but that's not certain. We need to strike now, before they reinforce." Jason clenched his fists. 3 days wasn't enough time. They had to act now, or everything they had worked for would be in jeopardy. He turned to his team, determination in his eyes. "We don't have time to waste. We take the fight to them, now. We go after their fleet and we cripple it before they can land their reinforcements. This is our last chance." The team, already battle-hardened, nodded without hesitation. They knew what was at stake. They had fought for months, but this mission would decide the fate of Earth. "Let's move," Jason commanded, and without another word, the team went into action. The transport was prepped, the weapons loaded, and the plan was set. This time, it wouldn't just be about taking down one base or one stronghold, it would be about taking down an entire fleet. The Zorath wouldn't know what hit them. As the team boarded their transport and lifted off, the weight of the mission settled in, but Jason's resolve was unwavering. He knew the stakes. This mission was their best shot at turning the tide of the war. "We've come this far," he said quietly to himself, "we won't stop until we finish this." The transport raced through the atmosphere, the team preparing for what lay ahead. Jason's mind was focused. They would destroy the Zorath fleet, or they would die trying. There was no other option. The Zorath might have the upper hand in technology, but humanity had something they didn't: courage, tenacity, and the will to fight until the very end. As they neared the enemy fleet, Jason glanced out the window, the sight of the alien warships looming large in the distance. The time for hesitation was over. The battle was about to begin, and Jason and his team would be the ones to deliver the first strike. As Jason and his team approached the Zorath fleet, the tension inside the transport was palpable. Each member of the team knew what was at stake, but Jason's focus never wavered. They had already accomplished the impossible by surviving the previous encounters, but this mission would be the true test of their resolve. The fleet they were targeting wasn't just any ordinary Zorath stronghold, it was a fully operational armada, ready to invade Earth and wipe out everything they had fought for. The stakes had never been higher. Jason stood in the center of the transport, his mind racing through the plan once again. The fleet was positioned just beyond the atmosphere, heavily guarded by advanced Zorath warships. To strike at the heart of their operation, Jason knew they would need to get in close, infiltrate the enemy's lines, and hit them hard before they could react. The first strike had to be swift and precise, no room for error. "We're almost there," Jason said, his voice steady as he looked at his team. "Stay sharp. We hit them fast, and we hit them hard. No hesitation." The team nodded, each of them feeling the gravity of the mission. They had trained for this moment, prepared for the possibility of facing the most formidable forces the galaxy had to offer, but the reality was far more daunting. They were about to engage in the largest battle humanity had ever fought. "Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth," Jason continued. "We're fighting for every person we've ever known, for every future we've ever dreamed of. This is it. This is our stand." The transport broke through the upper atmosphere, the dark void of space stretching out before them. The lights of the Zorath fleet blinked in the distance, each ship a towering monument of destruction. The Zorath were waiting, expecting an attack, but they were not prepared for the speed and ferocity with which humanity would strike back. The team readied their weapons, ensuring that everything was in place for the assault. Jason's heartbeat quickened as the transport locked onto the target. "Deploy," he ordered, and in an instant, the team was ejected from the transport, dropping down toward the fleet below. The vast expanse of the Zorath warships loomed closer, but Jason knew that every second of this mission would count. They had no time to waste. The team landed on the outer edges of the fleet's defense perimeter, using their advanced stealth technology to remain undetected. Jason surveyed the surroundings. The Zorath were formidable, but humanity had the advantage of speed and ingenuity. "We're in," Jason whispered to his team. "Move fast, stay low. We take out their communication relay first. Without it, they'll be blind to our movements." The team moved swiftly, clearing the first line of defense with military precision. As they approached the central communication relay, Jason's heart raced. This was the critical moment. A single misstep could lead to their immediate detection. They planted explosives on the relay, making sure everything was set. Jason looked to his team, nodding in approval. They had completed the first part of the mission. "Charges set," one of his team members confirmed, his voice calm despite the pressure. "It's time to move on." But just as they were about to leave, the Zorath forces suddenly shifted their position. Jason's instincts kicked in. They had been detected. "Move, now," he shouted. "Get to the extraction point. We're not finished yet." The Zorath warships began to light up with firepower as their shields activated. The team sprinted toward the extraction point, but the Zorath were closing in fast. The first shots fired, narrowly missing Jason as he led his team through the chaos. They could hear the hum of the Zorath energy weapons charging, the ground shaking with every blast. They had made it this far, but the fight was far from over. As they reached the extraction point, Jason's mind raced. They had successfully disrupted the enemy's communications, but the Zorath were retaliating faster than they could keep up. Just as they were about to board the transport, a massive Zorath warship loomed overhead, blocking their only exit. Jason knew they had to act fast. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "Take out that warship now." The team turned and opened fire on the massive vessel, their weapons targeting weak points in its shield. Explosions rocked the ship as the team continued to push forward, the Zorath retaliating with everything they had. It was a battle of sheer willpower. Jason's heart raced as the ship's system started to overload. "This is it," Jason thought, "we can win this." With one final explosion, the Zorath warship was brought to its knees. The team rushed aboard the transport, their adrenaline running high as they made their escape. As the transport ascended into the sky, Jason took a moment to look back at the fleet they had just crippled. The Zorath had underestimated humanity before, and now they knew better. They had struck a major blow, but Jason knew this was just the beginning. "We've made our mark," Jason said, his voice filled with resolve. "But we've still got a long road ahead. This war isn't over." The team nodded in agreement. They had proven that humanity could face any challenge, no matter how powerful the enemy seemed. The Zorath were just the beginning. and Jason was ready for whatever came next. As the transport sped through the sky, Jason leaned back, taking a deep breath. The mission had been a success, but there was no time to relax. The Zorath fleet had been dealt a significant blow, but they were far from defeated. Jason knew that with each victory, the Zorath would only grow more desperate, more dangerous. They had to stay one step ahead, keep the pressure on, and never stop fighting. The days that followed were filled with intense preparations. Jason and his team knew that this war had reached a new level, and there was no turning back. The Zorath had proven that they would stop at nothing to crush humanity, but Jason had no intention of letting them win. As the team gathered in the war room, Jason looked around at the faces of his comrades. Each one of them had fought hard, but they all knew that the hardest battles were still to come. "We've hit them where it hurts," Jason began, his voice steady, "but we need to keep the momentum. They won't just lay down and accept defeat. We need to keep them on the defensive." The team nodded in agreement, each one of them ready for the next phase of the fight. Jason's plan was simple. They would strike at the heart of the Zorath Empire, taking down their key strongholds and crippling their military infrastructure. They knew the risks. Infiltrating the Zorath homeworld was no small task, but Jason had never been one to shy away from a challenge. "This is it," Jason said, looking each team member in the eye. "We go straight to their homeworld, and we hit them where they can't recover. It's the only way we end this. We make them pay for every life they've taken, for every family they've destroyed." With the plan set in motion, the team began to prepare for the most dangerous mission of their lives. The transport was outfitted with the best weapons and technology available, and every member of the team underwent a final briefing. The journey to the Zorath homeworld would take several days, but Jason knew that the distance between Earth and the enemy would not matter. They had a mission to complete, and nothing would stop them. As they approached the Zorath homeworld, Jason felt a sense of determination settle over him. They had come this far, and there was no turning back now. The enemy was vast, but humanity was not just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for the future of the entire galaxy. "We're almost there," Jason said, his voice calm but filled with purpose. "This is our last chance to make it count." The team checked their gear one last time, knowing that once they landed, they would be in the heart of enemy territory. The Zorath were not prepared for a fight like this, and Jason intended to make sure they would never forget the humans who dared to stand against them. The transport broke through the atmosphere of the Zorath homeworld, and the team prepared for their descent. The ground was a barren wasteland, scarred by years of war and destruction. But in the distance, the towering fortresses of the Zorath military loomed, an imposing reminder of the enemy they had to face. "We land here," Jason ordered, pointing to a nearby landing zone. "We infiltrate their command center, disable their military infrastructure, and take down their leadership." The team nodded in unison, ready for the fight ahead. As the transport touched down, the team quickly disembarked, moving swiftly and quietly through the desolate landscape. The air was thick with tension, every step bringing them closer to their goal. Jason led the way, his senses heightened, constantly scanning for any signs of danger. They moved through the shadows, using the terrain to their advantage as they approached the Zorath command center. The closer they got, the more intense the enemy presence became. The Zorath had set up formidable defenses around their stronghold, but Jason knew that this was their best chance to end the war once and for all. "We take it down from the inside," Jason said, his voice low but determined. "Once we're in, we disable their communication systems, disrupt their defenses, and make sure they can't launch a counterattack." The team moved into position, taking their places around the perimeter of the command center. Jason's heart pounded in his chest, but his mind was clear. They had come this far, and there was no turning back. As they breached the outer walls of the Zorath stronghold, the battle began. The Zorath forces were waiting for them, their weapons charging as the humans fought to push forward. The fight was intense, but Jason and his team were relentless. Every shot, every move was calculated, their every action designed to break the Zorath's grip on their homeworld. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about reclaiming what was theirs, about proving that humanity would not be defeated. As they reached the central command room, Jason knew the final confrontation was at hand. The Zorath leader stood before them, his cold gaze locked onto Jason. "You think you can defeat us?" the Zorath leader sneered. "You are nothing but insects." Jason stepped forward, his voice unwavering as he replied, "We're not insects. We are humanity. And we will fight until we have nothing left." The final battle for the Zorath homeworld had begun, and Jason knew that no matter the cost, humanity would emerge victorious. The final confrontation was upon them. Jason and his team stood face to face with the Zorath leader, the last remaining obstacle between humanity and their victory. The Zorath command center was a fortress of high-tech weapons and advanced defenses, but none of that mattered now. What mattered was the will to survive, the human spirit that had carried them this far. The Zorath leader, towering above them, looked down at Jason and his team with disdain. "You think you can destroy us? You think you can defeat an empire that has lasted centuries?" he sneered, his voice cold and filled with arrogance. Jason stepped forward, his eyes never leaving the leaders. "We've already proven that we can defeat you," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "You've underestimated humanity, and that's the mistake you'll pay for." The Zorath leader laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "You are nothing but insects, clinging to a dying world. You're too weak to defeat us." Jason's grip tightened on his weapon as he replied, "We're not weak. We're stronger than you could ever understand. This ends now." Without warning, the Zorath leader activated a powerful energy weapon, its beam of deadly light racing toward Jason and his team. But they were ready. In perfect unison, they dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast. The fight for survival had reached its peak. As the Zorath leader prepared for another strike, Jason's team moved swiftly, taking cover behind debris and firing at the leader's position. The Zorath leader retaliated with a barrage of energy blasts, but Jason and his team were relentless, dodging and weaving as they closed the distance. "We need to take him down now," one of Jason's teammates shouted over the comms, his voice filled with urgency. Jason nodded. "On my mark." We hit him all at once. They moved into position, and with a single word from Jason, they launched their attack. The Zorath leader was caught off guard by the sheer intensity of the human assault. Jason and his team fired their weapons with precision, targeting the weak points in the Zorath leader's armor. The enemy leader struggled, trying to retaliate, but his movements were slow and uncoordinated under the relentless barrage of fire. With a final, powerful shot, Jason's team disabled the Zorath leader's weapon, rendering him helpless. Jason stepped forward, his rifle aimed directly at the Zorath leader. "It's over," he said, his voice calm but filled with finality. "You're finished." The Zorath leader, panting and weakened, glared at Jason. "You may have won this battle, but you cannot defeat an entire empire," he spat, his voice filled with venom. Jason's expression hardened. "You're wrong. This is just the beginning." As the Zorath leader collapsed, defeated, Jason and his team stood victorious. They had broken the Zorath's hold on their homeworld, but the cost had been high. The battle for Earth was not over yet. Jason knew that the war would continue, that the Zorath would not give up easily. But for the first time, they had struck a decisive blow, and the balance of power had shifted in humanity's favor. As the team regrouped, Jason took a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought them here. They had fought, bled, and sacrificed, but they had never given up. They were human, and that meant they would never stop fighting, no matter the odds. "This is not the end," Jason said, looking at his team with determination in his eyes. "We've just taken the first step. We fight on, for Earth, for humanity, and for every person who is depending on us." With that, the team prepared to move forward, their mission far from over. They knew that there would be more battles ahead, but they also knew that they had the strength, the will, and the unity to face whatever came their way. The war for humanity's future had only just begun, and Jason would be there to lead the charge, every step of the way. As Jason and his team stood victorious on the surface of the Zorath homeworld, the reality of what they had accomplished slowly began to sink in. The Zorath Empire, once seemingly invincible, had been dealt a crippling blow, but Jason knew this was not the time to rest. The battle for Earth, for humanity's survival, was far from over. The Zorath had been pushed back, but they were far from defeated. The cost of victory was high, and Jason could feel the weight of the sacrifice on his shoulders. His team, though battered, had proven what humanity was capable of when pushed to the brink. "We've made our mark," Jason said, his voice steady but filled with resolve. "But this is only the beginning. The Zorath will come back, and we need to be ready." The team gathered around him, nodding in agreement. They had seen the power of the Zorath firsthand, and they knew that humanity's fight was just beginning. Jason's mind was already racing through their next move. They needed to strike before the Zorath could recover, to take the fight to their homeworlds and ensure that they would never again threaten Earth. "We have the momentum," Jason said, his voice firm as he addressed his team. "We take the fight to their heart, and we finish this war once and for all. The Zorath won't stop until they've eradicated us. We cannot afford to wait." The team, exhausted but resolute, prepared to continue the fight. The road ahead would be long and dangerous, but they had proven they could overcome the odds. They would not let the Zorath destroy everything they held dear. As they boarded their transport and began the journey back to Earth, Jason looked out at the stars, a sense of purpose burning in his chest. Earth was still standing, but humanity's survival was no guarantee. They had to stay vigilant, stay strong, and never stop fighting. The war was far from over, but Jason and his team had proven one undeniable truth: humanity would not be crushed, not by the Zorath, and not by anyone else. They would rise, time and time again, no matter what challenges lay ahead. "We're not done yet," Jason muttered to himself, his grip tightening on the armrest of his seat. "We fight for Earth, for humanity, for every soul depending on us." As the transport broke through the atmosphere, the familiar sight of Earth below brought a brief moment of peace, but Jason knew that peace was fleeting. There was no time to rest, no time to celebrate. The Zorath had only just begun to feel the sting of humanity's resolve, and they would not stop until they had eradicated every last one of their enemies. The team prepared for the next mission, each member determined to see this through to the end. There was no turning back now. "We fight together," Jason said, his voice full of conviction. "We fight until the Zorath are nothing but a distant memory." The mission was clear: humanity would take back their world, and they would not stop until the Zorath had been wiped from existence. As they looked down at Earth, Jason and his team knew that their fight would continue. The fate of humanity rested in their hands, and they would give everything to protect the planet they loved. The war for Earth was far from over, but Jason Wood and his team had shown the universe one thing: humanity was not a race to be conquered. They were a force to be reckoned with. And no matter how impossible the odds, they would never back down. The battle for Earth was just beginning, and Jason Wood would lead the charge until the very end.